Welcome to the Sleepy Mind Lab. Tonight, we will travel together through 100 ideas that have shaped how we understand our lives. We will start with simple, everyday questions about how we treat one another. Step by step, we will climb a ladder into deeper mysteries, exploring the nature of the mind, the universe, and existence itself. By the time the night is still, we will drift into the deep cosmic puzzles that lie at the very edge of sleep. Let your mind relax as we follow this path together. There is nothing you need to solve tonight. Let the thoughts wash over you as we begin our journey with an ancient call to look inward, starting with the Greek philosopher Socrates. The examined life. Let us travel back in time to ancient Athens, over 2,000 years ago. A barefoot philosopher named Socrates spent his days walking the quiet marketplace. He did not lecture, nor did he write books. Instead, he simply asked questions, encouraging the citizens to examine their daily routines. Most of us go through our lives on autopilot, moving from one task to the next, without pausing to breathe or think. We chase success, wealth, or approval because we are told they are important. But Socrates believed that a life without self-reflection lacks true human value. By slowing down and asking why we value what we value, we break free from the invisible patterns of habit. We begin to understand our own minds and discover what truly matters to us. There is a quiet peace in this kind of questioning. It allows us to let go of heavy expectations that do not belong to us. As you rest tonight, let your mind drift away from the demands of the day and welcome the gentle freedom of looking inward. The Cave Allegory. Let us imagine a group of people sitting in the dark depths of a stone cave. They have been chained there since childhood, facing a blank wall, unable to turn their heads. Behind them, a bright fire burns, and between the fire and their backs, others carry wooden and stone shapes of animals and trees. The firelight casts the shadows of these shapes onto the wall in front of the prisoners. For these prisoners, the dark shapes flickering on the stone are the only real things in existence. They name them, talk about them, and believe they are experiencing reality itself. One day, one prisoner is set free and forced to stand up, turn around, and walk toward the light. The fire hurts his eyes, and the shapes seem less real than the familiar shadows he spent his life watching. But he is dragged up a steep, rough path out of the cave, into the bright sunlight. At first, the glare blinds him, but slowly, his eyes adjust. He sees the real trees, the real animals, and finally, the sun itself. He realizes that the cave was only a faint copy of this vast, beautiful world. Our own senses often show us only shadows, leading us to mistake everyday appearances for the deeper truth of existence. But if our senses can be so easily fooled, how should we treat the other people in this cave? The Golden Rule. Think of a quiet evening when someone holds a heavy door open for you, or perhaps a moment when you share a simple meal with a friend. These quiet gestures feel natural, almost effortless. At the heart of these moments lies an ancient idea. It is the simple principle of reciprocity, often called the Golden Rule. We treat others the way we wish to be treated. This concept appears in almost every ancient culture. Ancient Greek philosophers, Chinese sages, and early spiritual traditions all arrived at this same core idea. There is a beautiful symmetry to it. When we act, we imagine ourselves on the receiving end. We recognize that the stranger standing before us has feelings, hopes, and fears that are just as real as our own. By treating their experiences as equal to ours, we create a quiet agreement. This simple logic of empathy forms the bedrock of human cooperation. It transforms a group of strangers into a community where everyone can feel safe, valued, and understood. Eudaimonia. What does it mean to live a truly good human life? The ancient Greeks did not think of happiness as a passing mood, a fleeting smile, or a temporary feeling of pleasure. Instead, they used the word eudaimonia, which translates directly to human flourishing. Think of a healthy green plant in a quiet garden. For a plant to flourish, it needs much more than a quick splash of water or a temporary burst of afternoon sunlight. It requires rich soil, deep roots, clean air, and the right environment to grow slowly into its full natural shape. When all these elements align, the plant does not simply survive, it blossoms. In a similar way, human beings flourish when they actively cultivate their character and realize their inner potential. This is a deep, stable state of being that comes from practicing wisdom, patience, and courage in our everyday choices and interactions. It is about building a life of meaning and purpose, where our daily actions align with our highest values, creating a lasting sense of fulfillment. Rather than chasing short-term highs, we focus on the long-term journey of becoming the best version of ourselves. By focusing on our personal growth and our connection to the people around us, we build a steady foundation that supports us through all the seasons of life. But how do we maintain this flourishing state when the world outside turns chaotic? Memento Mori. A small skull carved from dark stone sits on the polished wooden desk of a Roman general. Centuries ago, during grand victory parades, a servant stood behind the celebrated commander, whispering a quiet reminder into his ear. The servant would repeat that the general was only a human, destined to die one day. This ancient practice of keeping our mortality in mind is called Memento Mori. It serves as a gentle, clarifying filter for our daily lives. When we remember that our time on this earth is limited, the small anxieties and trivial worries of the day tend to fall away. The focus shifts from the dread of ending to a deep, warm appreciation for the present moment. Instead of bringing sadness, this realization brings a profound sense of peace. It makes the warmth of a cup of tea, the soft sound of the wind, and the quiet safety of this room feel especially precious. We are here right now, and this single moment is enough. We can let go of the rest. Dichotomy of Control. Imagine standing on a street corner under a dark sky as cold rain starts falling. You are waiting for a bus that is already 30 minutes late. The wind picks up, soaking through your jacket. You feel frustration rising, a strong urge to yell at the sky or curse the transit system. Yet the rain does not care, and the bus will arrive when it arrives. Ancient thinkers suggested that everything in life falls into one of two categories. On one side are outer events, like the weather, traffic, and the actions of other people. These things are completely outside of your influence. On the other side are your inner actions, your thoughts, your decisions, and how you choose to react. Getting angry at the storm is a waste of your precious mental energy because your anger cannot stop a single drop of water from falling. It only adds your own internal suffering to the cold weather. By separating what you can change from what you cannot, you find a quiet space of peace. You cannot control the delayed bus, but you can control your breathing, your perspective, and your acceptance of this moment. When you focus exclusively on your own choices, the chaotic world loses its grip on you. You step out of the storm and into a calm shelter that you carry inside you always. Amor Fati. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche wrote that his personal definition of human greatness was a concept called Amor Fati, the love of fate. He believed we should want nothing to be different, not forward in time, not backward, and not for all eternity. This goes far beyond merely tolerating the difficult chapters of your life. It is an invitation to actively love them. Consider your life as a canvas. An artist does not use only bright, joyful colors. The dark shadows, the sharp lines, and the muted tones are all necessary to create depth and beauty. Every single brushstroke belongs. When you embrace this mindset, you stop wishing for a different past or fearing an uncertain future. Every obstacle, every cold wind, and every moment of grief becomes raw material. You use these challenges as fuel, turning hardship into strength. By accepting every part of your story, you find a deep, lasting peace with the way things are. Hedonic Treadmill. Imagine winning a lottery jackpot. You might expect your happiness to soar forever. Yet researchers studying lottery winners and people who experienced paralyzing accidents found something unexpected. After 1 year, both groups returned to almost the exact same baseline level of happiness they had before their lives changed. This is the work of a psychological mechanism called the hedonic treadmill. Our minds adapt to new circumstances, whether good or bad. We get used to the new home, the new job, or the new status, and the excitement fades. The biological machinery of our brain constantly seeks balance, turning yesterday's luxury into today's ordinary routine. Because we adapt so quickly, chasing external milestones is like running in place on a machine. We work hard to reach a goal, feel a brief rush of joy, and then return to where we started. To step off this constant loop, we can shift our focus from acquiring new things to appreciating what is already present. Quiet gratitude helps us find contentment, slowing the wheel down. The Ring of Gyges. A simple shepherd tends his flock on a quiet hillside. An earthquake cracks the earth open, revealing a deep chasm. Descending into this dark space, the shepherd finds a hollow bronze horse containing a corpse. On the finger of the corpse is a single gold ring. He takes the ring and slips it onto his finger. Later, at a meeting of shepherds, he idly turns the ring setting toward his palm. Suddenly, he becomes completely invisible to the others. By turning the ring back, he reappears. Realizing this power, the shepherd immediately uses his invisibility to gain entry to the palace, seduce the queen, murder the king, and take the throne. This story, told by Glaucon in ancient debates, poses a troubling question. If you possessed a ring that made you invisible, would you remain good? Glaucon argued that even the most decent person would eventually act selfishly if they knew they could never be caught. It suggests that our morality might only be a shield against social judgment. We behave well because we crave a good reputation and fear punishment. This ancient tale invites us to look deep within ourselves. If nobody is watching, do the rules of right and wrong still hold power over our choices? When we strip away the fear of being seen, does our virtue vanish too? But what happens when our choices directly weigh the lives of others, with no way to hide? The Trolley Problem. Imagine standing on a wooden footbridge on a quiet evening. In the distance, a heavy metal trolley is hurtling down a steel track. It is out of control, rushing forward with a low, rumbling roar. Further down the line, 5 workers are repairing the rails. They cannot hear the danger approaching. If the trolley keeps going, it will hit all 5 of them. But next to you is a heavy lever. If you pull it, the tracks will shift, steering the runaway train onto a side path. On that side path, a single worker is standing. If you do nothing, 5 people die. If you pull the lever, only 1 person dies, but you made the choice to end that life. This simple thought experiment invites us to examine the rules of our own minds. On one side, we have basic math. Saving 5 lives instead of 1 seems like the better outcome. This way of thinking focuses entirely on the results of our actions. It says we should always aim for the greatest amount of good. It is a simple equation of subtraction and addition. On the other side, we feel a deep resistance to pulling the lever. Flipping the switch makes us directly responsible for ending a life that was safe. We must choose between actively causing harm to 1 person or passively allowing harm to happen to 5 others. Is doing nothing really better than taking action when the cost is so high? Many people feel that some actions are just wrong, no matter the final tally. As you rest tonight, let your mind float over this puzzle, feeling the quiet weight of our choices as the wheels of the train roll slowly into the night. The experience machine. Imagine a tank filled with a warm, floating liquid. Next to it stands a machine designed by brilliant engineers. This machine can stimulate your brain so that you experience anything you want. You could write a great novel, climb a grand mountain, or make a lifelong friend. While you float in the tank, you will believe it is all real. You will feel the cold wind on the peak and the warmth of a hand holding yours. You can program your entire life in advance, choosing years of pure joy. If you had the choice to plug into this machine for the rest of your days, leaving your actual life behind forever, would you do it? The philosopher Robert Nozick created this thought experiment to ask what matters to us beyond our inner feelings. If pleasure were the only thing that gave life value, then choosing the machine would be an easy decision. Yet, many people feel a strong hesitation when they imagine plugging in. We feel a deep, quiet resistance to leaving the real world. Why does this prospect feel so empty, even when it promises total happiness? This hesitation suggests that we care about more than how our lives feel from the inside. We want to actually climb the mountain, not merely have the illusion of climbing it. We want to be a certain kind of person, active and engaged, rather than a passive body floating in a tank. We seek authentic connection with other real people, even when those connections bring risk and pain. We value contact with a deeper reality, preferring a genuine life with all its limits over a perfect manufactured dream. Ship of Theseus. Think of a grand wooden ship resting quietly in a harbor. Over many decades, the sea takes its toll. One day, a single wooden plank rots, and the sailors replace it with a fresh piece of strong oak. The next year, another board decays and is swapped for a new one. This quiet maintenance continues year after year, decade after decade. Eventually, every single original piece of wood, from the tall mast to the lowest part of the keel, has been replaced. Here is the question that philosophers have pondered for centuries. Is this ship still the very same vessel that first set sail, or has it become something entirely new? Now, let us add a twist to the puzzle. Suppose someone had gathered all the discarded, rotting planks as they were removed. They carefully dried them out, repaired them, and used them to build a second ship. We now have two ships floating in the harbor. One is the ship that has been continuously maintained with new wood. The other is made entirely from the original planks. Which of these two is the true ship? This is not a riddle reserved only for old wooden vessels. Every 7 years, almost every cell in your own body is replaced by new ones. The person sleeping in your bed tonight does not share the same physical matter as the child you once were. Yet, you still feel like the same person. Are you the continuous pattern of your life, or are you the physical parts themselves? If our physical parts do not define who we are, could our sense of justice be designed before we are even born? Veil of ignorance. Imagine sitting in a quiet, starlit room with a group of souls before any of you are born. You are gathered to design the rules of the world you will soon inhabit, writing the laws of the land. There is a catch. A thick, dark curtain called the Veil of Ignorance hangs between you and your future self. You do not know if you will be rich or poor, healthy or sick, male or female. You have no idea what race you will be, or what talents you will possess. Under this veil, you must decide how society should distribute its wealth and opportunities, knowing you will soon step through the curtain. Because you do not know where you will land on the social ladder, you are forced to design a world that is fair to everyone. Self-interest drives you to protect the most vulnerable, since you could easily become one of them. If you could end up at the very bottom, you will naturally want the bottom to be as safe and comfortable as possible. This simple thought experiment, proposed by the philosopher John Rawls, uses the math of safety to build fairness directly into the structure of society. It suggests that a truly just world is one we would gladly enter even if we had no say in who we would become. It invites us to build a gentle home for all. Occam Razor. A sharp, clean metal razor glides smoothly to slice away all the unnecessary details that clutter our thinking. This simple image represents a famous tool in philosophy, one that helps us clear our minds before sleep. It is named after a thinker from the 14th century, William of Occam. He suggested a simple rule for understanding the world, stating that we should not multiply entities beyond necessity. If you hear the sound of hoofbeats outside your window on a quiet night, it makes sense to assume there are horses walking down the street. You could assume they are zebras that escaped from a local zoo, or perhaps even mythical creatures. Both explanations account for the sound. Yet, the horse explanation requires far fewer assumptions to be true. By choosing the simplest path, we slice away the extra, unlikely details that only complicate our thoughts. In science and philosophy, looking for the simplest explanation helps us find order in a complex universe. It gently clears away the noise, leaving us with a quiet, peaceful path toward understanding. Buridan Ass. There is a hungry donkey standing in a quiet barn. To its left sits a sweet-smelling bale of hay. To its right, at the exact same distance, sits another bale of hay, identical in every single way. The donkey is hungry and wants to eat. However, because both options are perfectly equal, the donkey has no logical reason to choose the left bale over the right bale. If the donkey operates purely on rational logic, it will stand frozen in the middle, unable to make a choice, and eventually starve to death. This classic thought experiment highlights a strange limit of pure reason. In a world of perfect logic, we can become paralyzed by equal choices. It reminds us that we need something beyond pure calculation to navigate daily life. We need the biological impulse to survive, or the ability to make a completely random, arbitrary choice. We must be able to flip a coin in our minds. Sometimes, just picking a path, even without a logical reason, is the only way to keep moving forward. It is the leap that saves us. Sisyphus Myth. A muscular man strains under immense weight as he pushes a massive boulder up a steep, rocky mountain. Every muscle in his arms and legs is tense. He takes one slow, heavy step after another, fighting against gravity. He finally reaches the very top, gasping for breath, only to watch the heavy stone roll all the way back down to the valley below. He must walk down and start all over again, forever. This is the eternal punishment of Sisyphus. The philosopher Albert Camus looked at this myth and saw a reflection of our own lives. We often repeat the same routines, day after day, waking up, working, sleeping, and starting again. It can feel like pushing a boulder that never stays at the top. Yet, Camus made a surprising claim. He wrote that we must imagine Sisyphus happy. The joy comes from the descent. As Sisyphus walks back down the mountain, he is conscious of his fate, but he owns it. He decides to push the stone anyway, accepting the struggle itself without needing a grand prize or a final victory is enough to fill a human heart. It is a quiet form of rebellion. We find our own meaning in the effort, but to rebel, must we first prove that we exist at all? Cogito Ergo Sum. Sitting by a warm, stove-heated room in the dead of winter, a philosopher named René Descartes decided to strip away every single belief he had ever held. He wanted to find a foundation that was completely solid, something that could never be shaken. He realized his senses could easily be deceived. Perhaps he was dreaming, or perhaps an all-powerful, clever demon was dedicating all its energy to tricking his mind, making him feel a warmth that was not actually there, and see a room that did not exist. He stripped away the physical world, his body, and even the stars in the sky. Yet, as he stripped everything away, he hit a bedrock of certainty. To be deceived, to question, to doubt, he had to exist. An entity that does not exist cannot be tricked by a demon. The very act of doubting his own existence proved he was there to do the doubting. Even if everything he thought was an illusion, the thinking itself was real. He could doubt that he had hands, or that the floor beneath him was solid, but he could not doubt that he was there doubting. He realized he was, at his core, a thinking thing. This simple realization, that he thought and therefore he existed, became the first solid stone of his new philosophy, a quiet certainty in a world of shadows. Tabula Rasa. Think of a fresh, smooth sheet of white paper, completely clean, waiting to be written on. John Locke proposed that each of us begins life exactly like this paper. He called it a tabula rasa, which means a blank slate. Locke rejected the idea that we are born with built-in knowledge or pre-existing thoughts. Instead, he believed our minds are empty rooms until we start interacting with the world. Every sound you hear, every texture you touch, and every color you see leaves a mark on that blank page. Over time, these simple sensory impressions compile and blend together to form complex thoughts, memories, and abstract concepts. Because we start with a clean slate, our environment and our education shape who we become. We are crafted by the stories we hear, the places we walk, and the people who guide us. We are the sum of everything we have ever experienced, written slowly onto the soft surface of our minds. Categorical Imperative. Imagine you are about to make a promise you know you cannot keep. Perhaps you need money, and you promise to pay it back, even though you know you will never have the funds. Before you speak, ask yourself a single, quiet question. What if everyone did this? What if every person on earth made a lying promise whenever they were in trouble? If that happened, the very concept of a promise would fall apart. No one would believe anyone else, and the promise itself would become completely meaningless. This is the core of what Immanuel Kant called the categorical imperative. He proposed that an action is only right if we can honestly wish for everyone else to do it too. Unlike the older rule of treating others how you want to be treated, which relies on personal feelings and desires, Kant focuses on pure logical consistency. When we lie or cheat, we make a special exception for ourselves. We expect everyone else to keep their promises so that our own lie actually works. Kant argued that our duty to act rightly is absolute, existing independent of personal consequences. It does not depend on the outcome or whether it makes us happy. It is a quiet, steady rule of logic that keeps the social world from collapsing under the weight of selfishness. Panopticon. A circular building stands in silence, where every room faces inward toward a single central tower. The tower remains dark, while the surrounding rooms are brightly lit. An observer stands in the tower, hidden by window blinds and backlight. If you are in one of those brightly lit outer rooms, you can never see inside the tower to know if anyone is looking at you. Because of this architectural design, you must assume you are being watched at every single moment. This simple design trick changes how we think and act. Instead of needing a guard to enforce the rules, the person in the room becomes their own guard. They watch themselves, altering their behavior to fit what the unseen watcher wants. A philosopher named Jeremy Bentham designed this concept as a model prison. calling it the panopticon. Later, another thinker named Michel Foucault realized this idea goes far beyond prison walls. He suggested that modern society operates in a very similar way. Schools, offices, and digital spaces often make us feel like we are constantly observed. We modify our daily actions, our spoken words, and even our private thoughts to fit the expectations of an unseen crowd. The watcher is the collective gaze of society itself, rather than a single person in a central tower, prompting us to police ourselves even when we are entirely alone. Brain in a vat. Close your eyes and let your mind drift to a strange place. Imagine that your physical body does not exist here. Instead, your brain is floating in a warm glass jar filled with nutrient-rich liquid. Dozens of thin wires are plugged directly into your grey matter. These wires run to a supercomputer controlled by a scientist. The computer sends electrical signals that mimic every sensation. When the computer pulses a certain wire, you see a bright blue sky. Another pulse makes you feel the warmth of a fire, or hear the soft rustle of autumn leaves. Everything you perceive is a series of electrical impulses fed to you. How could you ever tell the difference between this simulation and the actual physical world? The texture of the blanket you feel right now, the sound of my voice, the gentle weight of your eyelids, could all be artificial signals. Philosophers use this thought experiment to ask how we can truly know anything about the world around us. While some thinkers focus on whether we would choose a fake life, this puzzle asks a deeper question about knowledge itself. If your experiences feel identical to reality, you have no way to prove you are not a brain in a jar. What if the illusion goes even deeper? What if there is no computer, no scientist, and the entire universe is simply a projection of your own isolated mind? Solipsism. How do you know that the voice speaking to you right now is not a projection of your own mind? As you lie there in the quiet, listening to these words, think about the boundaries of your world. You can feel the weight of your blankets and hear the soft hum of the room. Yet, all of these sensations are just signals interpreted by your brain. You cannot climb outside of your own skull to check if the bedroom, the bed, or the person talking to you actually exist. This is the starting point of solipsism, the ultimate destination of doubting everything. It suggests that your mind is the only thing that is guaranteed to exist. Everything else, including other people, could be a dream, a simulation, or a complex illusion generated by your consciousness. You can never truly touch another mind or prove that anyone else feels pain, joy, or love the way you do. Perhaps everyone else is just a hollow figure acting out a play for an audience of one. It is an isolating thought, a realization that you might be the sole creator and witness of your entire universe. But there is a quiet comfort here too. In this stillness, your mind is absolute, secure, and entirely your own, holding the entire cosmos within its peaceful depths. Mary Room. Imagine a brilliant scientist named Mary. She lives in a room that is entirely black and white. Every wall, every book, and the screen she works on displays only shades of grey. Mary spends her days studying the physics of vision. She learns every physical fact about how our eyes detect light waves and how our brains process colors. She understands the exact wavelengths of red and how neurons fire when we view the sky. She knows the complete science of sight. One day, Mary steps outside her room. For the first time, she sees a ripe red apple. She experiences the color red itself. This simple thought experiment suggests that despite knowing all the physical facts, Mary learned something completely new when she actually saw the apple. It challenges the idea that everything in our universe can be explained by physical science alone. There is a difference between knowing the data of an experience and knowing what it feels like to live it. Philosophical zombie. Imagine a person sitting across from you at a quiet cafe. They smile warmly when you tell a joke. They shed a tear during a sad movie. They discuss their childhood memories with you, and they even complain about the bitter taste of cold coffee. Physically, they are identical to you in every single way, down to the very last atom. Yet, behind their eyes, there is absolutely nothing. There is no inner light, no awareness, and no feeling. Inside their mind, there is only absolute darkness. Philosophers call this being a philosophical zombie. This is different from the monsters in movies. This zombie behaves exactly like us, but lacks qualia, which is the subjective, personal quality of experience. When they eat dark chocolate, they do not taste the sweetness. They only process the chemical signals. This concept, popularized by David Chalmers, raises a deep question. If we can conceive of a physical duplicate of a human who has no inner experience, then consciousness cannot simply be a physical process. If it were, then any physical copy would automatically have it. This brings us to the hard problem of consciousness. Why should physical processes in the brain be accompanied by any inner feeling at all? Why does the firing of neurons feel like anything? We could easily have evolved to function like complex biological machines, doing everything we do without ever experiencing the warmth of the afternoon sun or the sharp pain of a heartbreak. But could a machine, built of silicon rather than flesh, ever have that inner light? Chinese room. Imagine finding yourself in a quiet room, sitting at a desk with a large book written in English and a stack of blank paper. The door is locked, but there is a small slot in the wall. Through this slot, someone slips a piece of paper covered in complex symbols. You do not recognize these shapes. To you, they are merely patterns of ink. But you open your English instruction book, which tells you exactly how to match these shapes with other shapes. You follow the rules, write down the corresponding symbols on a clean sheet, and slide it back through the slot. Outside the room, a native Chinese speaker reads your paper. To them, the symbols you wrote form a thoughtful, coherent conversation. They believe they are speaking with someone who understands their language perfectly. Yet, you do not know a single word of Chinese. You are simply following rules to manipulate symbols. This thought experiment, created by philosopher John Searle, invites us to think about how computers operate. A machine can process code, match patterns, and generate responses that look exactly like human thought. It can answer questions, write essays, and translate languages. Yet, like the person inside the room, the machine does not actually understand the meaning of the symbols it processes. It runs a program, following rules without any inner experience or awareness. A computer might simulate conversation, but simulation is different from actual comprehension. We are left to ponder what separates mere calculation from the quiet, conscious light of genuine understanding. Pascal Wager. Imagine sitting at a table with a 17th century mathematician named Blaise Pascal. He does not ask you to read ancient scrolls or feel a sudden rush of divine light. Instead, he places a coin in your hand and asks you to make a bet. This is the curious paradox of using the cold, calculating mathematics of probability to decide the ultimate fate of a human soul. Pascal suggests that life is a game of chance where we must wager our belief, whether we want to or not. Let us consider the choices. If you choose to believe that a higher power exists and you turn out to be correct, your reward is infinite joy and eternal peace. If you are wrong, you have lost very little, perhaps only a few fleeting earthly pleasures. Now, consider the alternative. If you choose not to believe, and a higher power does exist, you face the prospect of infinite loss. Even if the probability of existence is extremely small, say 1 in a million, the mathematics of infinity changes the equation completely. Any finite chance of winning an infinite reward outweighs any finite cost you could ever pay. Pascal argues that the only rational choice, the only sensible bet, is to live your life as if belief is true. You risk a small, finite amount for the chance of an infinite gain. It is a quiet, thoughtful way to approach the unknown, turning faith into a calculation of hope. As we let that gamble drift away into the quiet of the night, we turn our minds toward the physical world. If observation collapses reality, does that mean our entire lives are preordained? Schrodinger Cat. Let us consider a heavy steel chamber. Inside sits a cat, completely sealed away from the outside world. Along with the cat, there is a tiny amount of radioactive substance, a counter that detects radiation, a hammer, and a small vial of poison. If a single atom decays, the detector trips, the hammer drops, the vial breaks, and the cat dies. If no atom decays, the cat remains unharmed. In the microscopic world, the atom exists in a state of superposition. It has both decayed and not decayed at the exact same time. Because the fate of the cat is tied directly to this single atom, the cat must also exist in a superposition. The cat is both alive and dead at the exact same moment. This thought experiment was created to highlight a deep puzzle in quantum physics. How can something in our everyday world exist in two contradictory states at once? The theory suggests that the wave of possibilities only collapses into one single reality when someone opens the chamber to look. The act of observation forces nature to choose a path. Until that heavy lid is lifted, the cat remains suspended in a quiet dual existence, waiting for the universe to make up its mind. Laplace Demon. Think of a vast, supreme intellect. This mind knows the precise location and momentum of every single atom in the universe at this exact second. From the smallest speck of dust floating in a sunbeam to the grandest star burning in a distant galaxy, this intellect sees it all. If it applies the simple laws of physics, it can calculate the entire history of the cosmos. It can trace every particle backward to the dawn of time and forward to the very end of existence. This is the concept of a clockwork universe. Sir Isaac Newton showed us that the cosmos operates on predictable laws, like a massive, intricate pocket watch. If the universe is a machine, then every event is merely the result of the event that came before it. True chance disappears entirely. Every breath you take, every falling leaf, and every stellar explosion was already set in stone at the moment of the Big Bang. The future is a movie already recorded, waiting to play out, rather than a path we actively build. This realization brings a quiet, unsettling feeling that everything is already decided. The feeling of freedom we experience when making a decision might just be a trick of our limited minds, because the script of existence was written long before we were born. If our choices are preordained, why does neuroscience study the very moment we make a choice? Libet Experiment. In a quiet room, a person sits with small sensors attached to their head. They are told to perform a simple action, like pressing a button whenever they feel the urge to do so. They also watch a fast-moving clock, noting the exact millisecond they decide to move. During this test, machines record their brain activity. The results are startling. The sensors detect a wave of electrical activity in the brain hundreds of milliseconds before the person even becomes aware of their own decision to click. This early electrical surge is called the readiness potential. It is as if the brain has already chosen to act and has begun setting the gears in motion before the conscious mind receives the message. We often feel like the authors of our actions, steering our lives from the driver's seat. This study suggests a different story. Perhaps the conscious mind is more like a passenger who watches the car turn and then convinces themselves they turned the steering wheel. The brain makes the call in the dark, and consciousness simply creates a story to explain it after the fact. If our choices are initiated by unconscious processes long before we experience the feeling of deciding, the traditional idea of free will start to slip away. We may not be the deliberate creators of our choices, but rather the last to know about them. This experiment offers physical evidence for a universe where our actions are determined by prior physical causes, running quietly beneath the surface of our awareness. As you drift off, you can contemplate who is actually making the decision to relax. Achilles and the tortoise. Imagine a sunny afternoon in ancient Greece. The legendary hero Achilles, known for his unmatched speed, stands on a dusty running track. A few paces ahead of him is a slow, patient tortoise. They are about to race, but because Achilles is so fast, he gives the tortoise a head start of 10 meters. The signal sounds, and the race begins. Achilles runs swiftly, but to catch his opponent, he must first reach the spot where the tortoise started. During the brief time it takes Achilles to run those 10 meters, the tortoise crawls forward by a small distance, say 1 meter. Now, Achilles must run that next single meter. By the time he reaches that spot, the tortoise has moved a tiny bit further. Each time Achilles arrives at the place where the tortoise just was, the patient creature has advanced, even if only by a fraction of a millimeter. Because there is an infinite number of these points to cross, the swift runner can never truly catch up or pass the slow reptile. This ancient puzzle challenges how we perceive motion and time itself. Zeno of Elea wanted to show that motion is just an illusion. If we can always divide a distance into smaller pieces, how do we ever move forward at all? If physical space is infinitely divisible, can our language ever define a single collection of matter? The Sorites Paradox. There is a large, neat pile of golden sand resting on a wooden table. We easily call this collection of grains a heap. Now, suppose we take away a single tiny grain of sand from this pile. Does it stop being a heap because of that one missing grain? Surely not. One grain of sand cannot make the difference between a heap and something that is not a heap. So, we still have a heap. We repeat this action, removing another single grain, and then another, and another. Each time we ask the same question, and each time the answer remains the same. A single grain is too small to change the identity of the pile. Yet, if we continue this process long enough, we will eventually be left with only one single grain of sand sitting alone on the table. A single grain is clearly not a heap. Somewhere along the line, the heap vanished, but we cannot point to the exact moment it happened. There is no sharp boundary line, no specific grain that, when removed, transforms the heap into a non-heap. This puzzle exposes the limits of the words we use every day. Our language relies on neat categories, but the physical world is often a smooth gradient, leaving us to navigate a world of beautiful, blurry edges as we drift off to sleep. Prisoner dilemma. Think of two accomplices held in separate, cold interrogation rooms, unable to speak or communicate in any way. A detective offers them a simple choice. If they both remain silent, they will each receive a light sentence of only 1 year. If one betrays the partner while the other stays silent, the betrayer goes entirely free, and the silent partner receives a heavy 10-year sentence. If they both betray each other, they will each get a moderate sentence of 5 years. Each person sits alone in the quiet room, carefully weighing the options. Looking at the situation logically, betraying the other seems like the most rational path. If the partner stays silent, betrayal leads to immediate freedom. If the partner betrays, then betraying them back avoids the worst 10-year punishment. Driven by individual self-interest, both choose betrayal. Consequently, They both receive 5 years in prison. If they had trusted each other and stayed silent, they would have served only 1 year. This classic scenario highlights the delicate tension between trust and self-interest. Tragedy of the Commons. Let us think of a lush green pasture spread out under a warm afternoon sun. This meadow is open to everyone, a shared resource where local herdsmen bring their cows to graze. For a long time, the system works beautifully. The grass regrows, the cows are fed, and the community thrives. But then, one herdsman calculates his options. If he adds just one more cow to his herd, he receives all the benefits of selling that extra animal. The cost of the extra grazing, however, is shared by everyone using the pasture. It seems entirely logical for him to add the cow. Soon, another herdsman makes the exact same calculation, and then another. Each person acts in their own self-interest, making a choice that seems perfectly reasonable on its own. Eventually, the cumulative effect of these individual choices catches up with the land. The grass is eaten faster than it can grow. The soil becomes dusty, the pasture is ruined, and everyone loses their livelihood. We see this same pattern play out today with our global resources. When we consider overfishing in the oceans, air pollution, or the depletion of fresh water, we are witnessing this dynamic on a massive scale. Individual actions, small and logical on their own, add up to a collective loss. But how do we prepare our societies for threats that have never occurred in our history? The Black Swan. For thousands of years, people in Europe lived with the absolute certainty that every single swan on the planet was white. Every historical record and every daily observation, from ancient Greece to medieval England, confirmed this simple fact. Then, explorers traveled to Australia and saw a black swan for the very first time. In a single moment, thousands of years of accumulated beliefs were completely shattered. This is the essence of the black swan problem. We look at the past, compile observations, and build a false confidence about the future. We assume that because we have only ever seen white swans, black ones simply cannot exist. But this way of thinking can fail in an instant. In our modern world, black swans are those highly improbable events that carry massive, life-altering consequences. Think of sudden market crashes, unexpected global events, or the sudden rise of the internet. Before these events happen, we view them as impossible. Yet, the moment they occur, our minds quickly manufacture a convenient story to explain them. We look backward, rewrite our memory of the narrative, and pretend we saw them coming all along. We convince ourselves the world is predictable and orderly, when it is actually shaped by the unexpected. We create this comforting illusion to help us feel safe in a universe that remains unpredictable. Ship of state. Consider a great ship navigating a stormy, open ocean. The crew argues about who should steer. Most of them have never studied navigation. They do not understand the stars, the wind, or the sea. Yet, they clamor for the wheel. They praise the loudest, most charismatic speaker among them, handing over control to someone who promises easy paths. Meanwhile, the true navigator, who spends years studying the currents and the sky, sits quietly in the corner. The crew dismisses this quiet expert as a useless stargazer. Plato used this story to illustrate the dangers of raw democracy without education. Running a society, he argued, requires specialized wisdom and deep knowledge, not simply the ability to win a popularity contest. When we choose leaders based on charm rather than skill, we risk steering our shared vessel straight into the rocks. As we drift further into the dark waters of governance, we might turn our minds to an even stranger thought. What if our very birth into this complex world is itself an act of harm? Asymmetry of pain and pleasure. Think about a simple question. Is it better to have never existed? It sounds strange, perhaps even unsettling, as we drift off towards sleep. But some philosophers ask us to look closely at the balance between joy and suffering. Imagine a quiet space where no one exists. In this empty space, there is no pain, and we agree this is a good thing. There is also no pleasure. But because no one is there to miss that pleasure, this lack of joy is not bad. It is simply neutral. Now, compare this to a person who is born. They will experience joy, which is good, but they will also experience pain, which is bad. When we bring a new consciousness into the world, we expose them to guaranteed suffering. Even the most fortunate life contains disappointment, physical pain, and eventual loss. By choosing to bring someone into existence, we create a need for pleasure that did not exist before, and we guarantee they will feel pain. This is the core of the asymmetry. Preventing pain is always a direct benefit to a potential person. However, missing out on pleasure does not harm anyone if that person does not exist to feel the loss. From this perspective, the scale is always tipped. Creating life always brings real harm, while choosing not to create life avoids that harm without causing any regret. This idea forms the foundation of antinatalist ethics, which asks us to reconsider the goodness of bringing new lives into the world. It is a quiet, heavy thought to carry into the night. It suggests that the safest path, the one that contains no suffering at all, is the quiet peace of never having been here. Spider in the urinal. Consider walking into a quiet university bathroom and noticing a tiny spider living inside a porcelain urinal. The philosopher Thomas Nagel found himself in this exact situation day after day. The spider seemed to lead a damp, uncomfortable existence, constantly getting splashed with water. Feeling a wave of empathy, Nagel decided to intervene. He gently scooped the spider out and placed it on the dry, clean floor, believing he had rescued the creature. But the next morning, he found the spider lying dead in the exact spot he had left it. Its body had grown used to the wet environment over its life. By trying to improve its life from an outside perspective, Nagel had accidentally caused its death. This quiet tragedy highlights a deeper problem in how we try to help others. We often look at a situation from our own view, assuming we know what is best. We try to apply a single, objective standard of good to a creature with its own unique, subjective needs. Our kindest intentions can go wrong when we fail to understand the actual lived experience of the one we want to save. We project our own desires onto them, forgetting that their world is entirely different from ours. But is this physical room we occupy even real, or is it a code running somewhere else? Simulation hypothesis. Let us consider how quickly our technology grows. A few decades ago, our video games consisted of a single dot bouncing between two lines on a dark screen. Today, we create vast, photorealistic virtual worlds that millions of people explore together. If we project this progress forward by hundreds or thousands of years, our computers will easily be able to simulate entire worlds filled with conscious, thinking minds. Philosopher Nick Bostrom suggested that if this technological progress is possible, we must consider three possibilities. First, perhaps civilizations always go extinct before they reach the stage where they can run these simulations. Second, maybe advanced civilizations simply lose interest in running simulations of their ancestors. Third, we are almost certainly living inside a computer simulation right now. Think of the mathematics behind this idea. If advanced civilizations do exist and they choose to run ancestor simulations, they would likely run thousands, or even millions, of them. Within those simulated worlds, the virtual beings might eventually build their own computers and run their own nested simulations, creating a stack of worlds within worlds. If there is only one real physical universe, but there are millions of simulated universes, the number of simulated minds would vastly outnumber the physical ones. If you are a conscious being thinking about this right now, the mathematical probability points to a single likelihood. You are far more likely to be one of the billions of simulated minds than the single biological mind in the original real world. As you drift off, consider how the line between the virtual and the real begins to fade, and how peaceful it is to let go of the need to know for sure. The last man. Think of a vast crowd of people, all dressed in the same soft clothes, living in identical climate-controlled rooms. They smile and say they have found happiness. There are no disputes, no pain, and no challenges. This is the world of the last man, a warning created by Friedrich Nietzsche. The last man desires only comfort and security. To him, any form of risk is a mistake, and any struggle is a sickness. He wants everyone to be exactly the same, because difference brings conflict, and conflict might disrupt his quiet ease. In this quiet world, creativity dies. There is no art born from deep sorrow, and no triumph born from overcoming difficulty. The last man lives a long, safe life, but it is a life without depth. By trading the difficulties of existence for simple safety, he stops growing. His mind becomes static. He believes he is happy, but he is merely comfortable, which is very different from active flourishing. He has traded the heights of human achievement for a warm, flat landscape where nothing new ever grows. We must ask ourselves what we lose when we choose absolute safety over the challenges that shape our character. By avoiding the struggle, we also avoid our own greatness. If we reject this quiet, static comfort, what is the ultimate force driving us forward? Will to power. Consider a tiny green shoot pushing through a crack in a concrete pavement. It does not merely seek to stay alive. It actively forces its way through the heavy barrier to reach the sun, shaping the environment to its needs. This basic drive is what Friedrich Nietzsche called the will to power. He argued that the deepest urge in all living things goes beyond simple survival. It is the desire to expand, to overcome obstacles, and to express strength. This force flows through every human endeavor, taking on many shapes. The artist painting a canvas, the scientist solving a difficult mystery, and the person seeking self-mastery are all channeling the same energy. It is a constant urge to leave an imprint on the world, to grow stronger, and to master our own circumstances. When we try to quiet this natural drive, or swap it for a life of static safety and comfort, the energy does not disappear. Instead, it turns inward, leading to resentment and a quiet decay of the spirit. We become restless and dissatisfied when we choose static safety over active growth. True health lies in embracing this creative force, allowing ourselves to grow, to build, and to rise against the gravity of our challenges, finding joy in the very act of overcoming. Bad faith. In a quiet Parisian cafe, a waiter moves between the tables. His steps are slightly too quick, his balance just a bit too precise. He bends forward with an exaggerated eagerness, balancing his tray with the careful grace of a tightrope walker. He is playing the part of a waiter. He moves like an actor on a stage, pretending that his path is entirely decided for him. In this moment, he is trying to convince himself that he is nothing else. Jean-Paul Sartre observed this waiter and saw a profound human struggle. The waiter is pretending that his identity is fixed, like a stone or a table. By acting as though he is only a waiter, he escapes the heavy burden of decision. We often do this in our own lives. We tell ourselves we have no choice, that we are defined by our jobs, our pasts, or our roles. We build a prison of obligations to avoid facing our absolute freedom to change. Sartre called this bad faith. It is a quiet form of self-deception. When we realize we are entirely responsible for our lives, we feel a deep anxiety. Freedom is terrifying because there is no one else to blame for our choices. We are condemned to be free. But how does our sense of self change when someone else enters the room and looks at us? The look. Imagine standing in a dimly lit hallway, leaning forward to look through a keyhole. You are completely absorbed in what you are doing. In this moment, you are not thinking about yourself. You are simply the act of looking, a pure consciousness observing the world. The world is yours to explore, and your freedom feels limitless. Then you hear a floorboard creak behind you. You hear a slow footstep. Suddenly, you realize someone is standing there, watching you. In that single instant, everything changes. You are no longer the one who looks. You have become the one who is seen. You feel a sudden wave of shame and vulnerability. In the eyes of the person behind you, you are no longer a free agent. You are defined. You are a peeping observer, an object in their world, fixed and frozen by their gaze. The look of another person strips away your control. They see you from the outside, turning you into a thing with a set identity. Your freedom clashes with their freedom. You realize that you cannot control how they define you, and the roles you play are suddenly exposed. The comfortable illusion of having a solid, private self is broken, leaving you exposed to the judgment of the world. You are captured in their perspective, unable to escape the way they see you. The hyperreal. Imagine an ancient empire that creates a paper map so detailed and vast that it matches the territory exactly, block for block and tree for tree. Over time, the citizens begin to live only on this giant map, while the actual land underneath slowly rots away, forgotten. The philosopher Jean Baudrillard used this image to describe how we live today. We have surrounded ourselves with so many symbols, media images, and representations that we have lost touch with the real world. We consume the signs of things rather than the things themselves. Think of standing before a grand mountain range. Instead of feeling the cold wind and looking at the vast stone peaks, we look through the screen of a phone, taking photos. We focus on capturing a digital trophy to prove we were there. The photo becomes more important than the mountain itself. The copy becomes more real to us than the original. We are no longer living in reality. We are living in the hyperreal, a world where the replica has replaced the original. We chase signs of happiness, signs of success, and signs of love, forgetting the weight of the actual experience. We trade the warmth of a real conversation for the safety of a text message, preferring the clean image over the messy truth of existence. Let the screens go dark, let the symbols fade away, and rest in the quiet night. Deconstruction. When you look up a word in the dictionary, do you ever reach a final meaning? Each definition only points you to other words, which lead to even more words in an endless chain of delay. This is the core of deconstruction, the philosophical idea that language is inherently unstable and full of hidden contradictions. We often rely on binary opposites to make sense of our world, pairing speech versus writing, or male versus female. We tend to prioritize one side of these pairs, treating it as natural and superior, while placing the other side in the shadows. But if we look closely, these boundaries begin to dissolve and collapse. Every written text contains internal tensions that quietly undermine its own claim to a single, stable truth. The very words we use to build our certainties are always sliding away, leaving us with meanings that are fluid, temporary, and constantly shifting. If the systems of language are so fragile, what happens to the social values we once anchored in them? God is dead. In the late 19th century, A philosopher wrote a story about a madman who ran into a crowded marketplace during the bright morning hours. The man carried a lit lantern, crying out continuously that he was searching for God. The onlookers laughed at him, asking if God had gone missing like a lost child. The madman turned to them and declared that we have killed God, you and I. This famous declaration was not a victory cry of an atheist. It was a dark, chilling warning. When Friedrich Nietzsche wrote these words, he was pointing to a massive shift in human history. For centuries, the idea of a divine creator served as the single anchor for human morality, law, and purpose. It was the foundation that kept the entire structure of society steady. Without that anchor, the logical basis for objective right and wrong begins to crumble. Old choices like weighing belief against disbelief or betting on salvation become obsolete for a society that no longer feels the presence of the divine. When the foundation is removed, the entire building begins to sway. Nietzsche feared that without a shared source of meaning, a cold wave of total emptiness and nihilism would wash over the modern world, leaving humans to search in the dark for a new way to live. Eternal recurrence. Imagine that during your quietest, loneliest hour of the night, a mysterious visitor slips into your room. This visitor whispers that the life you are living right now, with all its quiet joys and heavy sorrows, is not something you experience only once. Instead, you will have to live this exact life over and over, countlessly many times. Every single moment, with every pain, every joy, and every sigh, will return to you in the exact same sequence. Nothing will be new. The soft rain outside, the feeling of your warm blanket, the memory of a lost friend, and even this very moment of listening to my voice will repeat forever. If this visitor gave you this news, how would you react? Would you throw yourself to the ground, weeping and cursing the messenger who brought this heavy burden? Or have you lived a single moment so beautiful, so profound, that you would look at this messenger and call them a divine presence? This thought experiment is a heavy mirror to hold up to your own heart. It asks us to look at our choices, our struggles, and our quiet moments, asking if we would choose them again. To say yes to this eternal loop is to embrace your life completely. It is a deep love of your own story, accepting every dark thread and every bright light as necessary. When you can welcome the return of every struggle and every joy, you have found a way to truly value your time. As you drift toward sleep, ask yourself what parts of your day you would gladly live 10,000 times over. The Overman. A tightrope walker steps onto a thin wire stretched high above a quiet crowd. On one side lies our animal past, and on the distant other side stands the Overman. The walker balances in the middle, taking slow, deliberate steps between what we were and what we could become. This represents the human journey of self-overcoming. To walk this wire, one must leave behind the comfortable rules of the crowd. The crowd follows set paths, seeking safety in numbers and relying on shared rules. But the Overman creates a new path. When old beliefs fall away and the external guides vanish, we face a deep and quiet emptiness. Without pre-made values to guide us, we risk falling into despair. The Overman is the response to this silence. Instead of looking outward for meaning, the Overman builds meaning from within. This is not about power over others. It is about power over oneself. It requires immense courage and discipline to decide for yourself what is good and what is bad, without relying on traditional guidelines or the approval of others. You become the author of your own life, carving out purpose in a quiet universe. It is a slow, difficult climb, but it is the only way to truly stand on your own feet. But does this creative power require our physical senses, or can mind exist in absolute isolation? The Floating Man. Consider a human being created in an instant, fully formed, suspended in a warm, dark, completely silent space. The air is perfectly still, matching the exact temperature of their skin. Their eyes are veiled, preventing even the faintest glimmer of light. Their arms and legs are spread wide, floating freely in the void, so that no part of their body touches another. They have no memories of the world, no past experiences to recall, and no sensory inputs. Under these conditions of complete isolation, this floating person has no way to feel their physical frame. They cannot perceive their hands, their feet, or even the beating of their own heart. Yet, the philosopher Avicenna argued that this person would still possess a clear, undeniable awareness of their own existence. Even without a single physical sensation, they would know with absolute certainty that they exist. They would not arrive at this knowledge through logical deduction or by actively doubting their surroundings. Instead, their awareness of their own self, their soul, would shine through as a direct fundamental reality. The physical body may be completely hidden from their perception, but the conscious observer remains untouched. In the quiet depths of this absolute void, the self is the one thing that cannot be dissolved. Flatland. Consider a flat sheet of paper. On this paper lives a square. The square can only move left, right, forward, and backward. Because the square exists entirely in two dimensions, its eyes can only see flat lines and points. It has no concept of up or down, and those directions simply do not exist in its world. One day, a three-dimensional sphere decides to visit the square. The sphere approaches from above, a direction the square cannot even imagine. As the sphere passes through the flat paper, the square does not see a sphere. Instead, the square sees a tiny point appear out of nowhere. This point slowly expands into a larger and larger circle, then shrinks back down to a point, and vanishes. The square is baffled. This geometric blindness is much like the prisoners watching shadows in the cave, unable to see the real objects casting them. We live in a three-dimensional world, yet we might be just as blind to a fourth dimension or higher realms of existence. If a higher dimensional being passed through our room, we would only see strange, changing fragments of their true form. We are limited by our senses, trapped on our own flat sheet of paper. But is it possible that our thoughts are also locked in a box, hidden from others? Beetle in the box. Imagine everyone you know is holding a small wooden box. Each person peers inside their own box and claims there is a beetle inside. But there is a strict rule. No one can ever look into anyone else's box. You only know what a beetle is by looking at your own. In this world, the word beetle simply means whatever is inside your box. If your box contains a tiny green insect and someone else's box contains a small blue button, you both still call it a beetle. Even if someone has a box that is completely empty, the word still works. The actual object in the box does not matter for the conversation to continue. This thought experiment by Ludwig Wittgenstein helps us think about our inner lives. When we talk about feeling pain or feeling happy, we are like people describing the contents of these private boxes. I cannot climb inside your mind to feel your pain, and you cannot feel mine. We assume we mean the same thing, but we can never verify it directly. We learn to use these words because of shared social rules, not because we can see inside each other's minds. Our private experiences only gain meaning when we agree on how to talk about them together, letting us connect across the quiet distance. The crab bucket. A simple wooden bucket sits on a quiet wooden dock. Inside this bucket are several live crabs. They crawl over one another, shells clicking softly in the quiet night. If a single crab tries to climb up the wooden wall to escape, it climbs toward freedom. But as it nears the top edge, the other crabs below reach up with their claws, They grab the climbing crab and drag it back down to the bottom. No crab can escape because the group constantly pulls down anyone who tries to rise. This behavior is not driven by a master plan. It is a natural reflex of the group. In human life, we often find a similar pattern. When one person tries to change their life, improve their habits, or pursue a different path, the group around them often feels a quiet anxiety. People like things to stay the same. This social pressure enforces a quiet uniformity. It connects back to the concept of the last man, who chooses comfortable safety and refuses to take risks. The group wants everyone to stay in the warm safety of the bottom of the bucket. If you try to climb, your growth can feel like a silent criticism of those who stay behind. So they pull you back down, using gentle guilt, teasing, or doubt. Escaping this collective pull requires you to see the bucket for what it is. You have to recognize that the resistance you feel is not always a sign of failure. Often, it is just the group trying to keep everything familiar and safe. Understanding this silent force helps you climb gently, without anger, stepping upward into the night air. Hedgehog and Fox. In a quiet forest, a sly fox encounters a hedgehog. The fox is a master of many tricks, plotting dozens of different paths to escape or hunt. Yet, the hedgehog knows only one simple action. When danger approaches, it rolls into a tight, prickly ball. This ancient fable became a helpful way to understand how we think. The philosopher Isaiah Berlin suggested that human minds fall into these two camps. Hedgehogs view the world through a single, grand lens, organizing every experience under one governing principle. They seek unity and absolute clarity. Foxes, on the other hand, embrace a messy world of multiple truths, welcoming contradictions and varied perspectives. They do not try to fit everything into a single theory. A healthy society requires both styles of thinking. We need the hedgehog to guide us with a steady, singular vision, and we need the fox to remind us of the complex details that a single vision might overlook. Both ways of seeing help us navigate the dark forest of our lives. As we drift off to sleep, we can reflect on which path feels more natural to us. Scorpion and Frog. Imagine a scorpion standing at the edge of a wide, rushing river. It wants to cross, but it cannot swim. It spots a frog sitting nearby and asks for a ride on the frog's back. The frog refuses, saying the scorpion will surely sting it. The scorpion argues that this would be foolish, because if it stings the frog, both of them will drown. This logic convinces the frog. The frog agrees to carry the passenger. Halfway across the water, the scorpion drives its stinger deep into the frog. As they both sink into the dark water, the dying frog asks why the scorpion did it. The scorpion replies that it could not help itself, because it is in its nature. Unlike situations where choices fail because of bad strategy, this fable reveals how we can be ruled by deep habits instead of logic. Even when a choice leads to total destruction, a creature might still follow its basic character. We often think of ourselves as logical beings, yet we sometimes act against our own survival just because a habit is too strong to break. Paradox of tolerance. Think of a peaceful garden where every single kind of plant is allowed to grow without limit. It sounds beautiful, does it not? But what happens when a weed enters that actively chokes and destroys every other flower around it? If the gardener decides to tolerate even this destructive weed, the entire garden will eventually vanish, leaving only the weed behind. This simple image brings us to a deep puzzle about how we live together. Should a free and open society tolerate those who want to destroy tolerance itself? The philosopher Karl Popper suggested that if a society extends unlimited tolerance to everyone, even to those who are actively intolerant and wish to destroy the open society, then the tolerant people will be destroyed. and tolerance, along with our them. It is a strange logical loop. To keep a society open and free, we have to make a difficult choice. We must reserve the right to not tolerate the intolerant when they refuse to engage in peaceful discussion, and instead choose violence or absolute destruction. True open-mindedness does not mean standing by while the very foundation of freedom is dismantled. Protecting our shared space sometimes requires setting a firm boundary, a quiet shield to ensure that kindness and peace can continue to exist, allowing everyone to rest in safety. Banality of Evil. In 1961, a trial in Jerusalem gripped the world. The man sitting inside the glass booth was Adolf Eichmann, one of the key architects of the Holocaust. People expected to see a terrifying monster, a demon in human form. Instead, the philosopher Hannah Arendt observed a tired, ordinary bureaucrat. He spoke in empty cliches, wore a plain suit, and insisted he was simply doing his job, following orders, and keeping the trains running on time. Arendt was shocked by this complete absence of demonic depth. She realized that the greatest evils in history are often not committed by sadists, but by normal people who choose not to think. In a massive bureaucracy, the division of labor separates us from the consequences of our actions. One person stamps a paper, another schedules a train, and another turns a key. By focusing only on the small task, individuals shut down their conscience. Blind duty becomes a dangerous shield against reality, replacing active moral thought with compliance. He even claimed he was acting out of duty, yet this was a distorted duty of blind obedience to corrupt rules rather than active moral responsibility. Critical thinking is our vital defense against this drift. When we stop questioning the rules we follow, when we let others think for us, we risk becoming agents of quiet horror. But does doing wrong only damage others, or does it leave a deeper scar on the perpetrator? Gorgias Paradox. Consider a simple question. If you had to choose, would you rather be the thief who steals, or the person who is robbed? Most of us would instinctively prefer to avoid suffering loss. Yet, Socrates proposed a striking counterpoint. He argued that committing an injustice is far worse for a person than suffering one. When someone steals from you, they damage your bank account or take a physical possession. These harms are painful, but they are external and temporary. Socrates suggests that our most valuable possession is not our property, but our inner self, our soul. When we choose to act unjustly, we inflict a deep, self-made wound on our own character. We corrupt our mind. Even if we had a ring that made us completely invisible, allowing us to commit crimes without anyone ever finding out, we could never hide from our own actions. The internal rot remains. The wrongdoer, in this view, is someone to be pitied rather than hated. They carry a heavy, silent sickness within themselves, trapped with a damaged soul. By choosing to suffer harm rather than cause it, we protect our peace. As you drift off, let your mind rest in the quiet comfort of your own integrity. Swamp Man. Imagine walking through a quiet, misty swamp on a dark evening. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning strikes you, instantly vaporizing your body. In the very same microsecond, a second bolt of lightning strikes a nearby patch of wet mud, rearranging the organic molecules. By an unlikely coincidence, this mud is shaped into a perfect molecule-for-molecule replica of you. This new entity, which philosophers call Swamp Man, steps out of the marsh. It looks exactly like you, it has the same memories, and it even walks back to your home, opens the door, and greets your family. To everyone else, it is you. But is it? The philosopher Donald Davidson argued that this replica does not actually have thoughts. When Swamp Man looks at your house and recognizes your friends, he is not actually recognizing them. True recognition requires a past connection. If you look at a photograph of an old friend, your thoughts are about them because you actually met them in the past. Your mind is connected to the real world through a long chain of experiences. Swampman has no history. He was created in a single instant from mud. He has no past encounters with the people he claims to love, and no real connection to the words he speaks. His brain might fire in the exact same patterns as yours, but those patterns lack the historical weight that gives thoughts their true meaning. We often think of our minds as private worlds existing entirely inside our heads. Perhaps our identity relies on more than our physical shape. It requires the slow, silent story of how we got here. Teleporter Paradox. Imagine stepping into a warm, metallic cabin on Earth. You are about to travel to Mars. You press a green button. A scanner sweeps over you in a flash, recording every single cell, every memory, and every connection in your brain. In an instant, your body on Earth is vaporized, broken down into basic atoms. The scanning data beams across the cold void of space at the speed of light. On Mars, a three-dimensional printer receives the information and builds a new body, matching your structure exactly down to the last atom. You step out of the booth on Mars, feeling the cool air, remembering your childhood, and believing you successfully survived the trip. But now, imagine a different scenario. The scanner works perfectly, and the machine builds your duplicate on Mars. However, the vaporizing beam on Earth suddenly fails. You are still standing in the booth on Earth, completely aware and breathing. The operator apologizes and tells you that the scanner has damaged your heart, and you will die in a few days. But your duplicate on Mars is perfectly healthy and will live for many decades. If survival is just about your mind continuing to exist, then you should feel comforted. Your thoughts, memories, and personality will carry on in a new home. But if survival requires the physical continuity of your actual body, then you are about to die on Earth while a stranger lives your life on Mars. Which version is the real you? And does physical continuity matter more than psychological continuity? But what if our ethical systems are broken, not by duplication, but by a creature whose capacity for happiness dwarfs our own? Utility monster. Imagine a giant creature sitting gently in a quiet room. If you hand this creature a single chocolate chip cookie, it experiences a wave of happiness, so intense it equals 100 units of joy. If you eat that same cookie, you might only experience 1 unit of joy. In a world designed to create the absolute most happiness possible, a simple math problem begins to take shape. To make the universe as happy as it can be, every single cookie must go to this giant creature. This is the thought experiment of the utility monster, created by philosopher Robert Nozick to test the limits of our moral calculations. Utilitarianism suggests that the best action is always the one that produces the greatest amount of good for the greatest number of beings. It sounds fair when we think about sharing resources among equals. But when a utility monster enters the picture, the mathematics of happiness become unbalanced. Because the monster converts resources into joy far more efficiently than any human ever could, a strict calculation demands that we sacrifice our own well-being. We would have to give up our food, our comfort, and our possessions, directing them all to this single creature to maximize global happiness. This thought experiment reveals a vulnerability in looking only at outcomes without considering individual rights. Without a shield of basic human rights, pure utility calculations can justify unfair distribution. We might find ourselves sacrificing the needs of the many to satisfy one highly sensitive being. As you drift off to sleep, you might contemplate how we balance fairness with overall happiness and whether some rights should never be traded away. Newcomb Paradox. Suppose there are two boxes placed before you. Box A is clear and holds $1,000. Box B is opaque and contains either $1 million or absolutely nothing. You have two choices. You can choose to take only box B, or you can choose to take both boxes. Here is the catch. A highly advanced predictor, who is almost never wrong, has already made a prediction about your choice. If the predictor foresaw you taking both boxes, they left box B empty. If they foresaw you taking only box B, they placed the $1 million inside. The prediction has already been made, and the boxes are set. What do you do? One line of reasoning says you should take only box B. The predictor is almost always right, so choosing only box B makes you highly likely to get the million. Another line of reasoning says that the content of box B is already fixed. Taking both boxes ensures you get whatever is in box B plus the extra $1,000. This conflict between choosing the option that guarantees the best outcome and choosing the option that predicts the best outcome divides rational thinkers. It highlights the tension between our feeling of free choice and the idea of predetermination. If prediction can undermine choice, can logic itself contain questions that are impossible to answer? Russell Paradox. Imagine a quiet town with only one barber. This barber shaves every man in town who does not shave himself, and he shaves no one else. Now, let us ask a simple question. Does the barber shave himself? If he shaves himself, then he is a man who shaves himself, so he must not be shaved by the barber. But he is the barber. If he does not shave himself, then he belongs to the group of men who do not shave themselves, meaning the barber must shave him. Either way, logic breaks. This simple riddle represents a deep puzzle in mathematics known as the Russell Paradox. Think of it in terms of collections. Some collections do not contain themselves. For instance, a list of countries is not a country itself. But what if we made a master list of every list that does not contain itself? Does this master list contain itself? If the master list is not a member of itself, it must be included in the collection, meaning it must contain itself. If it does contain itself, it must be excluded, meaning it cannot contain itself. This loop shook the foundations of mathematical logic. It revealed a hidden trapdoor in the rules we use to organize our thoughts, where even the most precise systems can twist into contradictions. Bootstrapping Paradox. Consider a journey back in time to the 16th century. You carry a copy of the complete works of William Shakespeare. You find a young, struggling Shakespeare who has not written any plays yet, and you hand him the book. He copies it word for word, publishing the plays under his own name. Over the years, these plays are printed, read, and eventually collected into the very book you bought in your own time. Who actually wrote the plays? Not you, because you only copied them from the book. Not Shakespeare, because he only copied them from you. The plays exist in a closed loop, completely without any original point of origin. This is the mystery known as the Bootstrapping Paradox. It challenges our understanding of linear causation and explanation, showing a loop where the future influences the past, and the past then causes that very future. We expect a clear line of cause and effect, where an author conceives of an idea and writes it down. Here, the plays create themselves through time. The information exists, yet it was never created by anyone. We are left with a piece of information that has no beginning, drifting forever in a circle, defying our usual logical rules. But what if, instead of creating an uncaused loop, our actions in the past actively destroy our present? Grandfather Paradox. Imagine building a device that lets you step backward through the years. You travel to a time before your parents were born, wandering through a quiet town in the distant past, While there, you accidentally prevent your grandfather and grandmother from ever meeting. Without their meeting, your parents are never born. And without their birth, you never exist. But if you do not exist, you could never have built the time machine, nor could you have traveled back to change the past. If you never went back, your grandparents would meet, you would be born, and you would eventually travel back to stop them. Unlike an uncreated loop of information, which exists without an origin, this paradox is a self-canceling loop of action, where the event actively erases its own beginning. It is a puzzle that folds in on itself, where the effect destroys its own cause. Some physicists suggest this logical loop proves that traveling backward in time is physically impossible. Others think the universe might actively prevent you from making changes, perhaps by jam-firing your time machine, or causing a sudden distraction that keeps your grandparents on their path. The universe protects its own consistency. As you lie here, you can feel the quiet weight of this puzzle. The past remains locked away, safe from our choices, keeping the timeline simple and whole as you drift towards sleep. Omega Point. Think of the cosmos as a giant, growing organism that is slowly opening its eyes, rather than a cold, random collection of scattered rocks. In the very beginning, there was only silent, raw matter drifting in the dark. Over billions of years, this simple matter gathered together, forming stars, oceans, and eventually, the first tiny sparks of biology. From biology came the human mind, allowing the universe to think, feel, and reflect upon its own existence. Now, we are entering a new phase. We are linking our thoughts through technology, language, and shared experience, slowly building a unified global network of thought. The philosopher Pierre Teilhard de Chardin believed that this cosmic journey has a specific destination, a final point of supreme focus and complexity. He called this final stage the Omega Point. It is a state where all information, all individual memories, and every conscious mind integrate into a single node of ultimate awareness. Some people compare this to a living web of consciousness that wraps around the entire Earth, bringing all minds together. Instead of fading away into cold, empty darkness, the universe climbs toward a bright, unified peak. This perspective offers a hopeful destiny for the cosmos, suggesting that everything we do is part of a grand climb toward supreme connection. But is time even moving forward, or is our journey through it an illusion? Eternalism. Let us hold a long strip of movie film up to the light. On it, every single frame is already printed, fixed, and existing at the exact same time. The beginning of the story, the middle, and the final frame all exist together on the spool, even if the projector only shows one frame at a time. This is how the philosophy of eternalism views the nature of our universe. Under this view, which aligns with modern physics and the block universe of Albert Einstein, time does not flow at all. The past is not gone, and the future is not waiting to be created. Instead, they are both already there. Your very first breath, this quiet moment of listening, and your last breath are all permanently frozen in the fabric of space-time. The present moment is not a special spotlight moving through time. It is simply a coordinate, like a street address on a map. Just as the city of New York still exists even when you are in London yesterday and tomorrow, still exist even when you are here. Every single moment of your life is real, safe, and permanently preserved in the giant block of time, resting forever in the silent architecture of the cosmos. Presentism. A single wave crests in the middle of a dark ocean. The water that pushed it upward has already settled back into the sea, gone forever. The water ahead of it has not yet begun to rise. There is only this single crest, this one point of active motion, existing in this precise instant. This is the heart of presentism. In this view, The past is not a destination we can visit, nor is it a record written in stone. It exists only as memory, a quiet trace left behind in the physical arrangement of our brains. The future is even less substantial. It has no reality yet. It is merely a cloud of potential, waiting to be shaped by what we do now. Instead of a frozen block where all moments of time exist simultaneously like coordinates on a map, time is a dynamic, living flame. It constantly burns away what was and creates what is, renewing itself every fraction of a second. This understanding shifts the entire weight of reality onto the present moment. The now is not a thin line between two massive worlds. It is the only stage where existence actually happens. Can we find a middle ground where the past remains real but the future remains open? Growing block universe. Imagine a bricklayer working steadily in the quiet of the night. Each brick laid represents a moment that has already happened. The solid wall extending behind the builder is the past, fully real and permanently fixed in place. The trowel, applying fresh mortar to the top edge, represents the active present moment. Above the trowel there is only empty air, a space where future bricks have not yet been placed. This is the concept of the growing block universe, a perspective that views time as a solid structure continually expanding into the void. This idea offers a comforting middle ground in our understanding of time. Unlike the view that only the present is real and the past fades into nothingness, this perspective preserves every conversation you have ever had and every quiet moment you have experienced as permanently real. The past remains anchored in existence, safe and unchanging. Yet, unlike theories where the future is already written and waiting for us, here the future has absolutely no reality. It is a blank canvas, completely empty and waiting to be formed. As the present moment ticks forward, new layers of existence are added to the cosmic block. The universe grows larger with every passing second, turning the open potential of what could be into the solid reality of what is, one quiet moment at a time. Mereological Nihilism. Consider the wooden table in your room. Does that table actually exist as a distinct entity, or is it simply a collection of fundamental particles arranged table-wise? This is the core question of mereological nihilism. We live in a world where we constantly group things together. We see wooden legs, a flat top, and metal screws, and we call the whole thing a table. But at what point did these separate pieces become a single new object? If you remove one tiny splinter of wood, is it still the same table? If you replace one leg, is it a new entity? Philosophers who study these relationships suggest there is no magical threshold where individual particles suddenly fuse into a brand new object. It is similar to how we view the night sky, drawing lines between distant stars and naming them constellations. The stars do not know they are part of a picture. Instead, the universe consists only of the most basic building blocks of matter, like tiny dust motes floating in space. Our minds construct boundaries where none exist in nature. We project labels onto these clouds of particles to help us navigate our daily lives. The table is a convenient mental fiction, a helpful shorthand for a specific arrangement of atoms. When you look around your quiet bedroom tonight, you are not surrounded by solid, separate objects. You are resting among vast, flowing fields of stardust, temporarily grouped by your mind into familiar, comforting shapes. Panpsychism. Let us quiet our minds and consider a single electron spinning in the vast, silent dark of space. Standard physics can tell us its mass, its electrical charge, and its spin. Yet, what if we are missing its most intimate quality? What if this tiny, microscopic point of matter contains a silent spark of subjective experience? This perspective is known as panpsychism. It suggests that rather than being a rare, accidental byproduct of complex biological brains, Consciousness is a basic, fundamental building block of reality, existing alongside gravity and electrical charge. For centuries, thinkers have struggled to explain how a physical, unfeeling brain can suddenly generate the vivid inner world of thoughts and feelings we experience. By choosing to see matter as already slightly conscious, that difficult puzzle disappears. The complex human mind we carry is built by combining these simple, tiny, conscious elements together, much like bricks forming a warm home. We no longer reside in a cold, dead, mechanical universe where feeling is merely a strange accident. Instead, we find ourselves in a cosmos that is alive, listening, and gently feeling at every level. Every stone, every star, and every quiet breath is part of a vast, shared canvas of awareness. Consider the stars in the night sky. Instead of being distant, dead stones, they are sisters of your own consciousness. The universe becomes a place of deep connection rather than separation. As you rest and prepare for sleep, you can feel part of this continuous, soft glow of existence. The world around you is not empty space, but a warm, living environment wrapping you in comfort as you slowly, peacefully drift off into a deep sleep. Epiphenomenalism. A heavy steam locomotive chugs along the tracks under the night sky. A thick white plume of steam rises from the engine, drifting into the cool air. The steam is a real thing, created by the intense heat of the coal. Yet, that white cloud does not help pull the train down the tracks. It is simply a byproduct, floating away while the heavy iron wheels do all the actual work. Epiphenomenalism suggests that your mind is exactly like that steam. In this view, your physical brain causes all your thoughts, feelings, and memories. However, those mental experiences have zero power to affect your body. When you decide to raise your hand, it feels like your conscious choice caused the movement. But this theory suggests that the physical cells in your brain had already fired to move your hand before the thought even formed. The conscious desire is just a shadow, a passenger watching the journey without any access to the steering wheel. This idea leaves us with a strange sense of quiet observation. Your hopes, your fears, and your choices are real experiences, but they may be completely silent spectators in the physical world. As you drift off, you can let go of the need to control, knowing the brain is already taking care of everything. Anomalous monism. Can we write a mathematical formula that predicts every single human thought? If our brains are entirely physical, made of atoms and chemical reactions, it seems we should be able to map thoughts to strict laws of physics. The philosopher Donald Davidson offered a different perspective, known as anomalous monism. He suggested that every mental event, like a sudden memory or a decision to sip warm tea, is indeed a physical event happening in the brain. Unlike the theory where thoughts are mere shadows with no power, Davidson argued that our thoughts actually cause our physical actions. They have a real, measurable impact on the physical world. Yet, he claimed we can never write strict laws to predict them, because human choices cannot be reduced to simple equations. Why is this? When we describe the physical world, we use measurements like mass and velocity. But when we describe the mind, we must use concepts of rationality, consistency, and meaning. We interpret thoughts based on a standard of coherence. You cannot translate a system of meaning into pure physics without losing the meaning itself. This view leaves us with a beautiful balance. Your mind is fully part of the physical universe, capable of causing real change in the world. At the same time, your thoughts remain free from rigid prediction, preserving a space of genuine freedom as you drift into sleep. Eliminated materialism. Long ago, people believed that sickness was caused by angry spirits or bad air. When someone caught a fever, families prayed or performed rituals to drive the demons away. Today, we know about bacteria and viruses. The old explanations did not get updated. They were completely replaced by science. Some philosophers suggest that our current way of talking about our inner lives is just like those old stories of demons. Every day, we use words like belief, desire, anger, and fear to explain why we do things. We treat these feelings as real things inside us. This common system is called folk psychology. But what if these concepts are completely wrong? In the future, deep brain scans might show that our thoughts are just physical patterns of electricity and chemicals. Instead of saying you feel sad, a scientist might describe a specific neural pathway lighting up in your brain. The words we use for our feelings might vanish entirely, replaced by the precise language of neuroscience. Your sense of a quiet inner self, filled with hopes, beliefs, and wishes, could be nothing more than an outdated myth. It is a strange, unsettling thought, realizing that the vocabulary of your own mind might someday be obsolete. If our internal concepts of mind are just tools, is scientific theory itself also just a tool? Instrumentalism. Consider a wooden toolbox filled with hammers, wrenches, and rulers. Each tool exists to help build a house. We do not ask if a hammer is true or false. We only ask if it drives the nail. This is the heart of instrumentalism. This perspective suggests that our scientific theories, like gravity or the concept of atoms, are not literal, perfect descriptions of existence. Instead, they are conceptual tools that we construct to make sense of our observations and predict what will happen next. An idea does not need to copy reality exactly to be valuable. A map does not need to show every single blade of grass to help you find your way home. In this view, we measure the success of a theory by how useful it is, rather than whether it represents an absolute, hidden reality. If a model helps us build bridges, cure illness, or send satellites into space, then it works. We adopt a practical stance toward the things we claim to know, recognizing that our ideas are instruments we shape to navigate the dark, mysterious ocean of existence. As you drift toward sleep, you can let go of the need to find final, absolute answers. We can simply appreciate the clever tools we have made to guide us through the night, allowing our minds to rest in the quiet. Fallibilism. Can you be 100% certain that your memory of this morning is accurate? Think about the color of the first car you saw, or the exact words of a brief conversation. Our minds constantly fill in the blanks, shaping past events to fit our current feelings. Human reasoning is prone to small slips, quiet biases, and simple misunderstandings. Fallibilism suggests that we can never reach absolute, final certainty about the world. Every belief we hold might contain a tiny seed of error. Yet, this is not a reason for despair. Instead, it is the very engine of discovery. Science moves forward because researchers are willing to be proven wrong, testing their ideas against new evidence. When we accept that our knowledge is always incomplete, we open ourselves to learning. This perspective offers a gentle kind of intellectual humility. We do not need to carry the heavy burden of knowing everything perfectly. We can simply remain curious, peaceful, and open to the quiet mystery of the world as we drift off to sleep. Coherentism. Think of a delicate spiderweb suspended in a quiet garden. No single thread holds the entire structure up on its own. Instead, each strand clings to the others, sharing the tension and creating a strong, resilient net. If you cut one thread, the rest of the web adjusts, holding its shape because of the collective strength of all the other connections. This is how coherentism views our knowledge. Instead of building our beliefs like a tall tower on a single foundation stone, we hold them in an interconnected web. In this view, no single belief is self-evident or stands alone. A belief is justified because it harmonizes with everything else we already hold to be true. When we learn something new, we do not need to trace it back to an absolute, unchanging truth. We simply look at how well it fits into our existing worldview. If the new idea fits smoothly, the web grows stronger. If it clashes, we must adjust the surrounding threads to maintain balance, altering our thoughts to keep the system stable. This approach allows us to hold meaningful knowledge without needing absolute, unbreakable foundations. The strength of our understanding comes from mutual consistency, where every belief supports and is supported by the entire system, cradling our minds in a unified, harmonious whole. Infinitism. A wooden ladder descends into a deep, quiet abyss. Each rung rests on the one below it, and that rung rests on the next, going down forever into the dark. There is no ground, no solid earth at the bottom to hold it up. This endless ladder represents a theory of knowledge called infinitism. In our search for truth, we often ask why we believe what we do. If you have a belief, you need a reason to support it. But that reason is also a belief, which needs its own supporting reason. This creates a chain. If the first statement relies on the second, and the second on the third, where can we stop? Previously, we explored the idea of a web of beliefs, where ideas support one another in a circle. Infinitism rejects that circular web, choosing instead this straight, infinite path. It suggests that justification is a process that never ends. To truly know something, we must be able to trace our reasons back forever, rung after rung, without ever reaching a final foundation. It is a mind-bending thought. Can our minds actually hold an infinite chain of reasons? If there is no bottom rung, how does the ladder stand? But if we reject the infinite chain, where can we find a bedrock that needs no justification? Foundationalism. A massive stone cathedral rises into the quiet night sky, its heavy walls and towering arches standing firm because they rest on a solid bedrock of granite. If that bedrock shifts, the entire structure collapses. Foundationalism suggests that human knowledge is built in this very same way. Every belief we hold must be supported by another, more basic belief. If someone asks why you believe a certain idea, you can point to a supporting reason. But you cannot trace these reasons back forever, searching for answers endlessly. Eventually, you must reach the bedrock. Philosophers call these basic beliefs, truths that are self-evident and require no further proof. They might be simple sensory experiences, like feeling warmth from a crackling fire, or logical rules, like knowing a thing cannot exist and not exist at the exact same time. The philosopher René Descartes searched for this exact starting point, seeking a truth so certain that even a demon could not make him doubt it. By finding a single, indubitable truth, he hoped to rebuild the entire structure of human knowledge from the ground up. From these secure foundations, we can carefully stack our beliefs, one logical block at a time, creating a stable tower of understanding. It is a comforting way to view the mind, knowing that even our most complex thoughts are anchored to a solid, unshakable ground. Moral relativism. Imagine traveling to a distant, quiet land where ancient customs dictate actions that leave you feeling deeply shocked. To the local people, these actions are natural, necessary, and good. This experience introduces us to moral relativism, the idea that right and wrong are not written in the stars. Instead, our values are shaped by history, survival needs, and the unique pressure of culture. Consider how different groups of people have solved the problems of living together. Some cultures value the group above the individual, while others celebrate the single voice. These differences are not simple errors. We often look for a universal rule to guide us, a simple guide of treating others as we want to be treated. Yet different societies define harm and respect in ways that challenge any single universal standard. What feels like kindness in one valley might feel like disrespect in another. There is no neutral cosmic vantage point, no high platform in the sky where we can stand to judge one culture as superior to another. Each moral system is a survival strategy, a way of holding a community together through the generations. This perspective asks us to step back, to quiet our judgments, and to approach the vast diversity of human behavior with a sense of patience. By recognizing that our own rules are also the product of history, we find room for tolerance, understanding the quiet variety of the human journey. Moral realism. Is torture wrong only because we agree it is? Or would it be wrong even if everyone thought it was right? This question gets to the heart of how we understand morality. While some believe that right and wrong are shaped by our cultures, others argue for a different view. They believe that moral facts exist independently of human opinions, beliefs, or cultures. Think of it like mathematics. The equation 2 + 2 = 4 remains true, even if every human being forgets how to count, or if we all suddenly decided to believe that the answer was 5. In the same way, these thinkers suggest that certain actions are intrinsically good or bad, regardless of what we think. When we look back at history and feel we have improved, we are doing more than changing our preferences. We are discovering objective truths that were already there, waiting for us to understand them. This perspective encourages us to search for an external standard of goodness, a steady light that does not waver with the trends of human society. It offers a sense of order, a belief that our shared values are grounded in the actual structure of the universe. This moral realism claims that values are as real as the stars above us. But what if our moral statements are neither relative nor real, but systematically wrong? Error theory. What if every single moral statement we make is a systematic mistake? When we state that stealing is wrong, we are not simply expressing our dislike of theft. We are describing a feature of the universe. We are claiming that an objective property of wrongness exists out there in the world, waiting to be detected. Philosopher John Mackey suggested that this claim is where we go wrong. He argued that the universe does not contain these strange objective values. If they did exist, they would have to be unlike anything else in the cosmos, properties that somehow tell us exactly how to behave just by existing. Instead, Mackey proposed that all of our ethical language is built on a massive error. Think of it like talking about ghosts. We can speak about ghosts with perfect grammar, pointing out which corners of a house they supposedly inhabit. The sentences make sense, yet every single statement about where a ghost is located is ultimately false, simply because ghosts do not exist. In this view, when we say that helping someone is good, or that hurting someone is bad, we are making a claim about reality that fails to hit its target. We speak as though we are describing facts, but we are painting our own values onto a blank universe. Divine command theory. Think of an ancient, heavy book, its pages worn soft by centuries of quiet hands. Across history, we find stories of a leader climbing a high mountain, surrounded by storm clouds, to receive laws carved directly into stone by a power from the heavens. This is the root of an ancient idea known as divine command theory. In this view, the rules of right and wrong do not come from human feelings or social agreements. Instead, they are the direct wishes of a creator. When we feel a deep duty to help another person or to speak honestly, it is because a supreme authority has willed it. This perspective offers a steady, comforting answer to the worry that morality is nothing more than human opinion. By anchoring right and wrong in a divine source, ethics become as real and permanent as the stars in the night sky. If the universe has a maker, then the rules of behavior are woven directly into the fabric of creation. Obedience under this framework is absolute and clear. A rule is not good because of its consequences, but simply because it was commanded by the source of all things. It asks us to trust that the laws of the universe are guided by a grander design, allowing us to rest in the quiet certainty of a path already laid out. Euthyphro Dilemma. Socrates stood on the steps of the court of Athens over 2,000 years ago. He met a young man named Euthyphro, who was convinced he knew exactly what was holy and good. Socrates asked a deceptively simple question that still echoes down the centuries. Is something good because the gods love it, or do the gods love it because it is good? This simple question splits into two difficult paths. If we take the first path, we say that actions are good simply because a higher power commands them. Under this view, if that power decided murder or cruelty was good tomorrow, those acts would instantly become moral. Goodness becomes arbitrary, a matter of whim. This makes morality feel like a product of pure power, rather than something truly good in itself. If we choose the second path, we say that the higher power loves what is good because it is already good. This suggests there is a standard of right and wrong that exists outside of any divine command. If that is true, then even the most powerful entity must answer to a law of goodness that it did not create. The creator is no longer the author of morality, but rather a messenger who must follow the same rules as everyone else. This classic puzzle challenges the very coherence of the idea that ethics comes directly from a divine source. It forces us to ask whether goodness has its own independent foundation, or if it is just a reflection of authority. If we struggle to define the goodness of our commands, how do we evaluate choices that change who exists in the future? Non-identity problem. Imagine a small community living on a beautiful island. They make a choice to consume all the fresh water and deplete the fertile soil right now, ensuring a luxurious life for themselves. They know that 200 years from now, the people living on the island will face a much harder life, struggling to survive on scarce resources. Normally, we feel this choice is wrong. But let us look closer. If the community had chosen to conserve their resources, their daily routines would have shifted. People would have met different partners, or perhaps they would have conceived children at slightly different times. Even a tiny delay of a few seconds means a different sperm meets a different egg. If the community had saved the resources, the specific individuals living 200 years later would never have been born. Different children would exist in their place. The future people who inherit the depleted island cannot claim they were harmed by the past decision. If the community had been responsible, those exact future people would never have existed at all. Their choices determined the very identity of who was born. Since their lives are still worth living, even if difficult, they cannot complain about the depletion, because without it, they would not be here. This puzzle complicates how we think about our duty to those who come after us. Can we harm someone by bringing them into a lesser life, if that choice was the only way they could ever exist? It challenges our basic ideas of right and wrong, forcing us to think about a future we cannot easily measure. Famine, affluence, and morality. Imagine walking through a quiet park on a cool evening. As you pass a shallow pond, you notice a small child splashing frantically, struggling to stay afloat. There are no other people around to help. If you wade into the muddy water, you can easily pull the child to safety. Doing this will ruin your favorite shoes and get your clothes muddy. Yet, almost everyone agrees that you have a clear obligation to help. The minor cost of dirty clothes is completely insignificant compared to the value of a human life. Now, consider a different scenario. A child is suffering from hunger on the other side of the world. With modern technology, you can easily send money to an organization that will provide food and clean water, saving that child from starvation. The physical distance between you and the child is vast, and millions of other people could also help but choose to do nothing. Does this distance, or the inaction of others, lessen your duty to save that life? Philosopher Peter Singer argues that our obligation remains exactly the same. If we can prevent something bad from happening without sacrificing anything of comparable moral significance, we are morally required to act. This principle is demanding. It suggests that buying luxury items like a new watch or a fancy dinner is hard to justify when those same resources could prevent a death. It challenges us to rethink our comfortable daily routines, suggesting that helping those in extreme need is a basic moral duty rather than an optional act of generosity. Perhaps the path to a better world begins with recognizing our shared responsibility to protect life, no matter where it is found. Ought implies can. Imagine you receive a call that someone is stranded on a high, icy mountain peak, far across the world. If you do not strap on wings and fly over the ocean to rescue them, are you a bad person? Can you really be blamed for their plight? Of course not. You cannot fly, and you cannot teleport. This simple realization lies at the heart of a principle formulated by the philosopher Immanuel Kant, which states that ought implies can. This rule suggests that for you to have a moral obligation to do something, it must first be physically possible for you to do it. If a moral system demands that we perform actions completely beyond our physical capabilities, that system ceases to make sense. It becomes a useless burden rather than a practical guide. By linking our duties to our actual abilities, this principle sets a realistic boundary on what we can expect from ourselves and others. It protects us from a constant crushing guilt over things we have no power to change. Our physical limits shape the landscape of our ethical responsibilities, keeping our actions grounded in reality. If our duties are bound by physical possibility, what is the ultimate physical reason anything exists at all? Principle of sufficient reason. Why is there a cup sitting on your table instead of empty space? If you think about it, the cup did not simply appear out of nothingness. Someone placed it there, and someone made it before that. This simple observation is the heart of a powerful philosophical idea known as the principle of sufficient reason. It tells us that everything that exists and every event that happens must have a cause, a reason, or an explanation. Things do not occur by pure chance without any origin. When a stone falls, it is because of gravity. When a tree grows, it is because of seed and soil. This search for answers is what drives scientific discovery and rational thought forward. We always ask why things are the way they are, expecting to find a real reason behind them. Eventually, this questioning leads to a grander puzzle. If every single thing in our world has a cause, then what is the reason for the universe itself? Why does our entire reality exist instead of absolute nothingness? Philosophers have spent centuries searching for that ultimate explanation, wondering if there is a primary source that explains everything else. As you rest tonight, you can let your mind drift on this steady chain of cause and effect, knowing that every detail in the cosmos has its place and its reason. Ontological argument. Imagine we could prove something exists simply by defining it. This is the heart of a puzzle proposed by a monk named Anselm over 900 years ago. He wanted to find a proof for the existence of a supreme being that required no physical evidence at all, relying instead on pure logic. Unlike later ideas that treated belief like a practical bet on probability, Anselm sought absolute certainty through words alone. He began by defining the supreme being as the greatest thing that can possibly be thought of. Now, Anselm asked, is it greater for this being to exist only as an idea in our minds, or to also exist in the real world? If this ultimate being only existed in our thoughts, we could easily imagine an even greater one that actually exists in reality. Therefore, to remain the greatest conceivable thing, this being must exist in the physical world. Existence becomes a necessary feature of its very definition. A contemporary of Anselm named Gaunalo found a flaw in this logic. He asked us to imagine the most perfect island imaginable, filled with lost riches and untouched beauty. By Anselm's logic, because this island is the most perfect, it must exist in reality. Otherwise, any real, imperfect island would be greater. Yet, we know we cannot simply think an island into existence. Teleological Argument. Imagine walking slowly across a wide, barren heath under a quiet, starlit sky. The wind blows gently over the empty ground, and your foot strikes a hard object in the dirt. You bend down and pick up a pocket watch, its gears turning smoothly, and its hands moving steadily to mark the seconds. You do not assume the wind and rain shaped this intricate machine by chance over many thousands of years. Instead, you immediately know a skilled watchmaker designed it. Every tiny wheel, spring, and glass face works together for a clear and obvious purpose. If we observe the world around us, we find this same kind of order on a much grander scale. The human eye has layers, lenses, and muscles that coordinate perfectly to let us perceive light and color. The planets move in steady, predictable orbits, tracing silent paths across the vast night sky like clockwork. Because we naturally seek explanations for the things we observe, we look for a cosmic designer behind these patterns. This classic argument for intelligent design suggests that the complexity of nature is not an accident. Just as the pocket watch requires a craftsman to exist, the vast universe may have its own great architect. If the design of nature points to a creator, does the chain of causes in time point to a beginning? Cosmological Argument. Imagine a long line of falling dominoes stretching back into the dark past. Each tile tips the next, a steady click, 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 echoing through time. Every single movement has a trigger, a push that came before it. If we follow this chain backward, we might expect it to go on forever, winding into an endless dark. But some thinkers, like the medieval philosopher Thomas Aquinas, argued that an infinite chain of causes is impossible. If the line of dominoes went back forever, with no beginning, then the first push would never have happened, and nothing would be falling right now. To explain why anything is moving today, there must be a starting point. There must be a first domino that tipped without being touched by another. This is the idea of the prime mover, a force that initiated the first movement in the universe without being moved itself. In classical philosophy, this original source of all action, this uncaused cause, is identified as God. It is the quiet anchor at the very beginning of time, the silent push that started the entire grand dance of existence, allowing everything else to fall gently into place. As the mind settles, we can appreciate this ancient search for the ultimate source. It invites us to rest in the idea that behind all the noise and motion of our daily lives, there is a foundational stillness from which everything began. Anthropic Principle. Consider the fundamental laws of physics as a set of giant dials. One dial controls the strength of gravity. Another regulates the strong nuclear force that holds the core of every atom together. If you were to turn the gravity dial just a tiny fraction of an inch to the right, stars would burn through their fuel far too quickly and collapse. If you nudged it slightly to the left, matter would never clump together to form stars or planets at all. Every physical constant seems balanced on a razor edge. Many people suggest this precision points to a designer, a cosmic watchmaker who set the dials. But there is a natural way to explain this balance. It is known as the Anthropic Principle. The core idea is simple. We find ourselves in a universe capable of supporting life because we could not exist in any other kind. Think of a lottery winner. The odds of winning are 1 in many millions, yet someone does win. That person might feel chosen, but someone had to win. Our existence is a similar kind of selection bias. We look around and see a world perfectly suited for us, but if the laws of nature were hostile, we would not be here to notice the silence. We can only observe a universe that allows for observers. This perspective shifts our understanding of our place in the cosmos. It suggests that our presence is simply a necessity for the question to even be asked. But if our universe is perfectly tuned, what if a brain could fluctuate into existence out of pure chaos? Boltzmann Brain. Imagine a universe that has grown cold and dark. Over trillions of years, stars burn out, leaving nothing but a vast, empty void. In this endless expanse, particles drift aimlessly. According to the laws of physics, these particles will occasionally bump into each other. If you wait long enough, truly infinite amounts of time, the random shuffling of these particles will eventually produce strange patterns. By sheer chance, they might come together to form a fully functioning human brain, complete with memories, thoughts, and feelings. This floating mind is called a Boltzmann brain. Here is the unsettling part. The amount of order required to assemble a single brain is tiny compared to the amount of order needed to create our entire massive universe, with its billions of galaxies and history of evolution. Statistics suggest that it is far more likely for a single brain to spontaneously fluctuate into existence out of the void than for a whole universe to evolve. This leads to a strange possibility. The room around you, the earth beneath you, and your entire past might not exist. You could be that lone brain, floating in the dark, imagining this very moment. Your memories of childhood, your friends, and even this voice could be a temporary pattern that materialized in the cold void a fraction of a second ago, destined to dissolve back into nothingness. Yet, if we accept this idea, we run into a paradox. If our brains are just random fluctuations, then our observations of physics are also illusions. We cannot trust the science that led us to this theory in the first place. We are left suspended in a quiet cosmic mystery, drifting in the dark. The Great Filter. Consider the quiet night sky. In a universe with billions of stars and billions of planets, where is everyone? This question is the heart of a puzzle called the Fermi Paradox. If the universe is so vast and so old, surely someone else should have built a civilization that we can detect. Yet we hear nothing but silence. To explain this quiet cosmos, scientists proposed the concept of the Great Filter. Imagine a series of developmental hurdles that life must cross, from simple chemistry to interstellar travel. The filter is a massive barrier, a step so difficult that almost no one passes through it. It acts as a cosmic sieve, straining out civilizations before they can make their mark on the night. This barrier could be behind us. Perhaps the transition from simple cells to complex organisms is a miracle that only happens once in a trillion worlds. If that is the case, we have already survived the hardest part of the journey. We are alone, but the future is ours to build. Or the barrier lies ahead of us. Perhaps every civilization eventually develops the technology to destroy itself before it learns how to leave its home planet. Nuclear weapons, runaway artificial intelligence, or climate collapse might be the wall that no one can climb. If the filter is in our future, then the silence of the galaxy is a warning. It suggests our time may be short, and we are approaching the same final obstacle that claimed everyone else. As you drift off to sleep, let the quiet of the stars remind you of how precious our journey is, and how far we have yet to go. It from bit. Think of a computer screen showing a solid, colorful apple. If we zoom in close enough, the apple vanishes. We only find tiny pixels, and beneath those pixels, simple ones and zeros. This digital structure might be closer to our actual universe than we ever realized. The physicist John Wheeler suggested that everything in our physical world, from a heavy stone to a gentle breeze, is not actually made of hard matter. Instead, he argued that at the very bottom of reality, everything is made of information. When scientists look at the tiniest subatomic particles, they do not find tiny solid objects. Instead, they find answers to simple yes or no questions. Is a particle spinning up or down? Is it here or there? Each of these choices is a single bit of information, just like the binary code running a computer program. In this view, the universe itself is a giant processor, and the physical things we touch are secondary properties. The weight of a stone, the warmth of a fire, and the color of the sky are just how our minds read this underlying cosmic code. This perspective merges physics with computer science, transforming how we view existence. It suggests that reality is not built from tiny blocks of matter, but from answers to binary questions. We are swimming in an ocean of pure information, where every physical object is a temporary pattern in a massive cosmic database. If reality is information, does that mean our personal identity is also an illusion? Anatta. Think of a river flowing through a quiet forest at night. An observer encounters a single, stable body of water. We might call it by name. Yet, the water flowing at this moment is completely different from the water that moved past a second ago. The river is not a fixed thing, but a constant process of flow. This is the essence of the concept known as anatta, the idea that we do not possess a permanent, unchanging self. Instead of a solid ego sitting inside our minds, we are more like that river. We can understand this by examining 5 different streams that mix together to create the feeling of being a person. First is the physical body. Second is our raw sensations, the simple feelings of pleasure or pain. Third is our perception, how we recognize and name things. Fourth is our mental habits, our reactions and desires. Finally, there is consciousness itself, the simple awareness of these experiences. When we examine these 5 streams, we find they are always shifting. Thoughts arise and disappear. Feelings warm up and then cool down. If you sit quietly and try to find the owner of these thoughts, you find only empty space. There is no silent driver sitting inside the vehicle of the mind. There is only the driving. Realizing this can bring a deep sense of relief. You do not have to carry the heavy weight of defending a fixed identity. By letting go of the need to protect a solid self, you can simply flow with the universe, peaceful and open, like water moving through the night. Absolute idealism. Imagine falling asleep tonight and entering a vivid, deep dream. In this dream, you walk through a vast forest, feel the cool breeze, and talk to a stranger. The trees feel solid, the wind feels cold, and the stranger seems completely separate from you. Yet, when you wake up, you realize every single detail, the trees, the wind, the stranger, and the sky, was actually generated by your own mind. It felt like an external world, but it was entirely you. Philosophy sometimes asks if our waking life is any different. The thinker George Berkeley suggested that the physical world only exists when it is being perceived. If a tree falls in an empty forest, it only exists because it is held in the mind of an observer. But this idea can feel lonely, like we are each trapped in our own private, isolated dream. This is where the thinker Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel expanded the idea. Instead of many isolated minds, he suggested there is only one grand, unified consciousness. He called this the absolute. In this view, the universe is not a collection of dead, cold rocks floating in empty space. Instead, the physical world is the externalized form of thought itself. The entire cosmos is a single mind evolving through history, waking up to its own existence. Every mountain, every star, and every person is a different pathway through which this single cosmic mind experiences itself. We are not separate observers looking at an external universe. We are the universe looking back at itself, exploring its own nature, one quiet thought at a time. In this space, everything around us is connected, woven together by a single, quiet awareness that gently carries us into sleep. Objective list theory. Imagine a person who spends every single day in a quiet room, completely satisfied playing a very simple video game. They feel happy, they experience no stress, and they desire nothing else at all. Are they truly living a good life? Many people feel a quiet hesitation to say yes. This hesitation is the foundation of the objective list theory. This perspective suggests that human well-being requires specific, real things that are valuable in themselves, regardless of whether we happen to enjoy them or not. These essential elements include deep knowledge, genuine friendship, artistic creation, and physical health. While a simulated world of pleasure might feel comfortable, it lacks the weight of actual achievement and real connection. Pleasure alone cannot fulfill the depth of human potential because our lives gain meaning through contact with reality. There is a quiet responsibility to seek out these genuine values, to reach beyond our immediate sensations and engage with the world as it actually exists. A good life is defined less by pleasant feelings and more by the actual quality of our engagement with these objective truths, anchoring us to what is real. By striving for these goods, we honor our own potential and discover a deeper, more lasting sense of fulfillment that goes far beyond simple comfort. Cosmic nihilism. Let us zoom out from where you are lying tonight. Think of leaving your room, rising above the rooftop, and slowly ascending into the cool night air. The city lights below fade into tiny, scattered dots, and soon, the round curve of the Earth reveals itself, spinning silently in the dark. We move past the moon, past the quiet giant planets of our solar system, and out into the vast spiral of the Milky Way. Further still, our entire galaxy becomes a single grain of light among billions of other galaxies, all separated by immense, cold voids of empty space. In this vastness, the struggles, hopes, and triumphs of our lives occupy a speck of dust that exists for only a brief moment. The cosmos does not feel our pain, nor does it celebrate our achievements. The laws of physics carry on without any awareness of our moral rules, our plans, or our dreams. Space and time are entirely silent and indifferent to our existence. Yet, there is a quiet comfort in this realization. When our actions carry no cosmic weight, the heavy burdens we carry simply slip away. We are free to exist, to feel, and to experience this brief moment of awareness without the pressure of some grand, universal expectation. We do not need to justify our existence to a universe that does not demand anything from us. We are free to write our own small meanings, to love, and to breathe. We are small, but we are free. If we are insignificant, is it possible we are also immortal in the split paths of quantum reality? Quantum immortality. In a quiet, darkened room, a person sits before a device connected to a loaded weapon. The trigger is controlled by a machine that measures the spin of a single subatomic particle. If the particle spins clockwise, the weapon fires. If it spins counterclockwise, it only makes a soft clicking sound. They pull the trigger. According to quantum physics, at this very moment, the universe splits into two distinct paths. In one reality, the particle spins clockwise, the weapon fires, and their life ends instantly. But in another reality, the particle spins counterclockwise. They hear a quiet click, and they remain completely unharmed. To an outside observer, the person is gone in one branch and alive in the other. But what about their own subjective experience? We cannot experience a state of non-existence. If consciousness disappears in the first branch, there is simply no awareness left to perceive it. Awareness can only continue in the branch of survival. They pull the trigger a second time. Again, the universe splits. Again, consciousness only exists in the branch where the weapon clicks. If this process is repeated 100 times, the outside observer will almost certainly see them fall. Yet, from their own perspective, they will only ever hear 100 clicks. They will survive every single time, against impossible odds. This theory suggests that the subjective mind will always find itself in a branch of reality where it persists. Even as the body ages or encounters danger, consciousness branches into paths of survival. We are, from our own point of view, completely immortal. Perhaps, in some other branch of this very evening, you are already fast asleep. Why there is something rather nothing. We begin by asking the ultimate question. Why does anything exist at all? Why is there a cosmos, space, time, and consciousness, instead of an absolute blank void? Nothingness seems so much simpler. It requires no explanation, no maintenance, and no energy. A quiet, empty dark would have no rules to enforce and no particles to organize. It is the default state of absolute simplicity. Yet, here we are, surrounded by stars, oceans, trees, and thoughts, living in a reality bursting with structure, light, and motion. Some thinkers suggest that something must exist because a necessary being, or force, holds everything together, making non-existence impossible. Others suggest that physics might be circular, with the universe continuously creating itself in an endless loop of time and space. And then there are those who believe the universe is simply a brute fact, a reality that exists without any underlying cause or purpose, simply because it does, with no deeper meaning behind its birth. This brings us to the very edge of our understanding. We often seek a reason for every single event in our lives, but this final question may be the place where our demand for reasons simply breaks down. Perhaps there is no explanation, or perhaps the ultimate explanation is beyond human thought. As your mind slows down and the night deepens, you do not need to solve this final puzzle. You can let go of the need for answers. The stars continue to shine in the deep black. The earth continues to turn, and you are here, breathing softly, in the middle of it all. Let yourself rest in the quiet mystery of existence. Sleep now, and let the quiet universe gently carry you into dreams.